I believe that this conversation should have great importance to women who have men in their lives that they care about. And I'll tell you why. Not just for the, hey, let's see if we can get inside their head, because everybody's different. But men, obviously, you've built a great following, but I see a lot of, and I dismiss criticism of, this guy hates women and he's just teaching men to be predators. I don't believe that. I've read the videos. I've watched the videos. Which I now believe is a second version of your book, which you have an amended version of the book, which is the one I have. But here's my point. There's so many women in my audience who are often looking to me, not because I'm better than what they have. I'm sure they've traded up, but which is a fairly low bar. I deal outwardly with struggle. I think that we don't talk about struggle. We don't talk about suffering because it's embarrassing, it's belittling, it's shameful, it's self-indulgent, it's selfish, and we're afraid of it, of exposing our weakness, and yet it's such a universal. And there are tools and tactics, many of which you discuss in your work, that we could be sharing with one another. So what I think is interesting is while you're coaching men to improve their prospects, let's say, there's also a fundamental understanding in there for women of the insecurities that men have. Once my wife said to me, much smarter than I am, you don't need all the muscle. You don't need to be strong. And I said, yeah, you're right. I said, here's my problem, okay? You think my problem is maintaining. My problem is, as a 50-plus-year-old man, is that I went through a phase of not knowing why I was here anymore, outside of the intellectualism of the work. And I believe that journalism is an act of faith in the future. And of course, it's flawed. It's flawed like everything else that's human by design. But I believe in it. But personally, I try to provide what I can. I'm a parent. I'm a friend. These are very important things to me. But I'm not who I was. I'm a much more a seasoned, tactical self-defense person. I don't believe in fighting. I only practice self-defense because I don't believe in rules once we get that line crossed, other than the law. But I lost that sense of, I don't need these muscles because I'll never be strong like I was. I'll never be dangerous like I was without a weapon. I'll never be athletic like I was anymore. Those days are over. My son is 17. I outweigh him by 75 pounds, and he is all I can handle on a regular basis just because of his youth and his vitality and just how strong his muscle connections are. And women don't get that. They don't get very often, not to generalize, but I think a lot of men don't let the women in their lives know what they need and that they need. And I wonder what you think about that. I'm sorry to over-explain it, but it's how I process. And what role that could play in better relationships.
Yeah, so, the bookmark that I placed in my head when you were
rambling,
presenting that, I'm not going to call it rambling. Let's call it a speech. Is, it open with, Chris, why do you need all that muscle? Is what the missus said. It's like, you think to yourself, yeah, do I really need all the muscle? I thought to myself a few years ago, because I've always trained, I've always been a big guy because I was always interested in looking strong. And, when I enter the room, there's a reputation about yourself that sort of precedes you when you have that physical presence. And I thought to myself, what would happen if I had to get into a fight? Because I've never been into a fight. How do you handle that? So I got into boxing because I wanted to challenge myself. And, again, I'm a kid at the 70s, so I'm not a young man. I had a boxing competition earlier this year with a gentleman who was 20 years younger than me, 2 inches taller and about 35 pounds heavier. And let me tell you, that creates a lot of fear in you when you face off against another man. You put your jaw on the line and you have to hit him, and you have to hit him harder than he hits you because you want to win. It's a lot of work. So, back to the original point of Chris, what do you need all that muscle for? Like, you don't need it, sort of thing. I always find that interesting because what women say and what they do, meaning like what their behaviors are, I always believe the behaviors. and she's chosen you, Chris. I mean, you're obviously married, you've got children together, you have a family. If you were inadequate and she liked 5'6", 110 pounds, she'd probably leave the marriage and move on to that, but she hasn't. So there's something to be said about the physicality and, you know, the strength that you impose as a man, and the masculinity, you know, that you sort of bring to the table. Like, that's a lot of testosterone, right? Women like that. So I think one of the narratives, one of the struggles, one of the stories that men need to get their heads around is watch women's behaviors. Watch the behavior in general of people. I'm not just narrowing this down to women, but again, you know, I talk a lot about dating, but watch the behavior of people and don't listen to so much of what they say. Their actions express their priorities, right? I mean, like, one of the big complaints that guys have, you know, when it comes to the realms of dating is like, you know, I was her friend and I was her shoulder to cry on. And then she went off and, you know, with Mr. Exciting. And, you know, Mr. Exciting is always like, you know, 6'2", broad shoulders, narrow waist, football player, linebacker sort of thing. And the guy with the chess master's degree, he's just not getting, you know, responded to. Women like a strong, virtuous, tall, masculine man. They want to look up to a giant. They want to know that you got it. And being physically strong is part of that equation. You'll never get out of that. You'll never get out of that.
So how do you justify that? How do you reconcile it, Richard, with what we see all the time now, especially with social media and everybody flaunting exaggerated ideas of their life? The 5'6", 110 guy who runs a hedge fund and has nothing but the most beautiful women, even if they're, you know, somehow being compensated for their presence. And guys seeing that and saying, so if I don't have the bank, and that's what this culture rewards more than anything else, whether you're from Canada or America or from, you know, Sri Lanka, if you don't have the cash, that's the real currency, pun intended, in our society. And that's your only measure of worth. It doesn't matter that you can keep me safe. It doesn't matter that you're powerful. My black card will beat you.
It's a measure of worth, but it is not the entire measure of worth, though. Because I mean, the thing being is now you're talking about the multifaceted pieces of puzzles that are required to complete the narrative of hypergamy. And all that really means is that women generally date across and up on the socioeconomic scale. They want to be with a guy that's better than them. And that's fine. It's not a problem with women. It's the reality, and it's a feature of the survival nature of human beings. Had women chosen losers throughout history, you and I would probably not be sitting here today. Incompetent men that couldn't get food or protect the tribe would have, you know, we would have just gone the way of the dodo. So women choose winners, right? So that's fine. And being like a 5'6", very successful banker brings financial resources to the table. And again, that's one piece of the puzzle, but it's not the entire piece of the puzzle, right? Like, women have a long laundry list of requirements that they tend to have in men. When I got separated a number of years ago, I was at this dinner party, and, you know, I was with this group of entrepreneurs, and the wives were there and the girlfriends and stuff. And I was single at the time. And one of my friends, you know, wife came up to me. She goes, you know, Rich, I got to set you up with Becky. You know, you got the 6'6s and I got to connect you and da da da. And I'm like, well, what are the 6'6s? I've never heard of this before, right? And she said, well, you know, you're 6 foot tall, 6-figure income, 600 horsepower car, 6 months out of a relationship, 6 inches in the pants. I got all these like sixes, right? And I'm like, okay, well, that's a long list of requirements that you have to introduce me to your friend. I don't even know what she looks like, but it's like, you know, it's not, you know, he's got a nice job and he's a nice guy, right? It's not, you know, he's a pleasant fellow that, you know, makes his bed in the morning, right? It's a reality of the world, right? Like, there are areas that we need to compete in as men, and being competent financially, being able to, and money is what makes the world go around, right? I mean, it's on the money, you know, in God we trust, money, all this sort of, like, it is our religion, you know, in general. If you don't have money, you're not going to have women around on a long-term basis. You might have them around on a short-term basis. I mean, I've seen lots of stories with guys telling me that they lost their wife or their girlfriend to the guy that just got out of jail with a neck tattoo and the teardrop tattooed under his eye, doesn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, but he looks like a badass. And she'll throw her, you know, herself at a guy like that for a couple of nights, but she'll go back to the guy with the money. So it's like, there's all these moving pieces. And I think understanding that it's not just, you know, just be jacked or just be rich or just be captivating or just be compelling or just have a good social network and influence. These are a lot of the pieces of the puzzle, but they're just pieces of the puzzle.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.